The night I moved into my flat, I sat on the floor of the living room for about an hour. Not because I was tired, not because I had nowhere to sit. I sat on the floor because I could not quite believe the quiet. And because I was trying to understand what I was feeling, which was not what I expected to feel at all, I was 62 years old. And it was the first home I had ever had entirely to myself. I want to tell you what that first year actually did to me, because I have since spoken to a number of women who went through the same thing. Women who were 58, 64, 70. And what I found is that we all share three things nobody warned us about. I am going to tell you all three of them. And I am going to tell you the one thing I wish someone had said to me before I started. I grew up in my parents' house. I went to university. I lived with flatmates. And then at 31, I married. For 27 years, I was someone's wife, someone's mother, someone who had always been accountable to another person's presence. The marriage ended when I was 60. The divorce took 2 years. And then, at 62, I moved into a flat that was mine. Now, when I say I had never lived alone, I want to be precise about what I mean. I do not mean I had never been by myself. I had had weekends alone when my husband was traveling. I had had evenings to myself when the children were small and somehow both asleep at the same time. I knew what solitude felt like inside a shared life. But there is a difference, and it is a significant one, between solitude inside a shared life and a home that belongs entirely to you. In the first, someone is coming back. The space is still shaped around another person's presence, even when they are not in it. In the second, there is no one coming back. The space is just yours. And that is a completely different thing to live inside. The first 2 weeks were disorienting in a way I was not prepared for. Not because I was unhappy. Because the quiet was a different kind of loud than I expected. I would come home and there was no one to absorb the weight of the day. No question of what's for dinner. No other person adjusting the temperature of the room. Just me and the sound of my own breathing and a decision to make about what I wanted to do next. I remember standing in the kitchen on the third evening, holding a tin of soup and realizing I had been standing there for 4 minutes because there was no one to check in with about what we were eating. It sounds so small. It was not small at all. It was the first moment I understood how much of my daily life had been organized around someone else's existence, not dramatically, not resentfully, but quietly, constantly, for 27 years. I called my friend Carol at the end of the second week. Carol had been widowed at 59 and had lived alone for 4 years by that point. I said, "Is it always like this?" She said, "No." She said, "Give it 4 months." She was right. But it was not what she described that changed. It was what I found. The first thing nobody warned me about, meeting yourself. When you have spent 30 years being someone's wife, and before that, someone's daughter, someone's flatmate, there is a version of yourself that has never existed without an audience. I do not mean this as a criticism of marriage. I mean it as something I could not have understood from the inside. I had been calibrating, making small adjustments to how I occupied space based on who else was in the room, what I ordered at a restaurant, how loudly I laughed, when I went to bed, how I spent a Sunday morning. Even what I thought, sometimes the thought would start, and then I would notice I was editing it for a listener who was not there, alone. There was no one to calibrate for. And what I found in the quiet, and this took several months, was a woman I had not properly met. She had a completely different rhythm to the day than the one she had been keeping for 27 years. She liked silence in the morning in a way she had never been allowed to discover. She had opinions about how a room should feel that she had never been able to act on. She ate dinner at 5:30 and did not feel the need to explain it. She read for 3 hours on a Sunday afternoon without once thinking about whether she ought to be doing something else. She was, I discovered, quite good company. That meeting with myself was the most important thing that happened in that first year, and no one had warned me it was coming. Most of what I had been told to expect was about managing the loneliness. Nobody mentioned that on the other side of the adjustment was someone worth getting to know. The second thing nobody warned me about, a grief that is not about the marriage. There is a grief that comes with living alone for the first time that has nothing to do with whoever you separated from or lost. I was not grieving my ex-husband. The marriage ending had been the right thing. I had done that grieving already, in the years before the decision and in the months just after. What I was grieving was something older, the decades of being not quite fully known, the years of making myself smaller in small ways, not dramatically, not in ways anyone would have seen or named, but smaller, quieter, less. And when you live alone for the first time and the space is finally entirely yours, you feel the shape of what you had been fitting yourself around, like a hand that has been in a fist for a long time, slowly opening. Carol described something similar. She said, when David died, I had to figure out which parts of me had been genuine and which had been for him. She said the two things looked almost identical from the inside, and it took about a year to tell the difference. She said, you will know you have done it when you stop reaching for his opinion on things. That grief is real, and it is allowed, even when you are glad, even when leaving was your choice. Sitting with it, naming it, not rushing through it is the only way through it. And on the other side was something I did not expect. The third thing nobody warned me about, how good your own company turns out to be. I started cooking what I actually wanted to eat. I slept with the window open, which I had always wanted to do and never been allowed to. I spent Sunday mornings doing exactly nothing and found an enormous amount of pleasure in that space. I also noticed something about the people around me. The women I had known for years who had been trying with the best intentions to rescue me from the aloneness, who kept suggesting I join things, try things, fill the time. I understood what they were doing. They were projecting their own fear of being alone onto my situation. And their fear was not about me at all, because what I was finding was not emptiness. It was spaciousness. The feeling of being exactly where I was supposed to be, on my own terms, in a home that asked nothing of me except to live in it. My friendships also got better. Not because anything changed about my friends, because when you are not managing a shared life and everything that takes from you, you have more of yourself available for everyone else. More attention, more presence. Less of the low-level static that comes from maintaining something you are not sure about. And slowly, the quiet that had felt like absence became something else, something I looked forward to, something I would not trade. If you are in the first weeks of living alone, whether by choice or by loss, I want to say 3 things. First, the adjustment is real. Do not let anyone tell you it should be easier than it is. Give yourself the full first year before you decide what you think about it. Second, what you find in the quiet is not emptiness. It is yourself. And you are more interesting, more capable, more worth knowing than you have probably been told. Third, the loneliness that people warned you about will come. It comes in waves, not as a permanent condition. And in between the waves is something worth staying for. I was 62 before I got that. I wish I had found it sooner, but I am glad I found it at all. My name is Patricia Hayes. This is Patricia's Porch, where I believe the most honest conversations are the most useful ones. If this found you at the right moment, please share it with someone who needs it. And subscribe below. I am here every week, and I would love to keep this conversation going with you. Thank you for sitting with me. I will see you next time.